Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
Cliff can show up wearing whatever jersey he wants to. I got my Janae Agwumake in tow here because it is Janae and Golick Jr. here on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and ESPN Plus. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. And guests are going to join us on the Goodyear Hotline. Mike Golick Jr. and Amber Wilson joining us here. And Amber, I had to let everyone know right off the bat, today's show's going to sound a little different here out in the concourse. Out in the concourse at Mohegan Sun Arena, getting ready to watch Janae Agwumake and the LA Sparks take on the Connecticut Sun. And Amber, you've already gotten to hear many of the sights and sounds the stadium has to offer.
They are very diligent there at the Mohegan Sun about practicing their in-arena music well in advance of tip-off. So we will be experiencing that together all throughout the show. But I told Mike when we were off air, the good news is he's got his own hype man the whole show. It's like they're putting on a concert for him. There's no way that you can get sleepy during the next 3 hours.
No, and I feel good because I can alert people because, Amber, you know this. We've all been waiting to get back out to live sporting events. Maybe some people haven't been yet. So I can let you know that as of August 26th, the year 2021 of our Lord, they are still playing swag surf in arenas across this great nation.
We have not progressed in terms of in-arena music. We're still stuck back 20 years ago.
We're still finding a way to make it happen. So if you hear any songs you like, let us know. At Mike Golick Jr., at Amber W790.
Still slaps.
It still absolutely slaps. Be a part of Janae and Golick Jr. Nation on the Dr. Pepper Twitter feed. ESPN Nation's presented by Dr. Pepper. College football's back, and so are the fans. Return to glory with Fansville by Dr. Pepper. The one fans deserve. Now, we will get to in a little bit some news surrounding COVID-19 in the NFL because Adam Schefter, our ESPN NFL insider, has been tweeting up a storm. Amber, as last I saw, now 9 Titans players and coaches, including head coach Mike Vrabel and starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill, in the COVID-19 protocol with positive tests. Now, we don't know who is vaccinated or not vaccinated or how long they're going to be in this protocol, Amber, but as we near the end of the preseason, we're already starting to see some of the things we saw last year, especially with this Titans team.
Yeah, with this exact Titans team, how strange it is that it's been a year and a half, and here we are again. It feels like a lot of those things are going to repeat themselves about this season, and we'll get into more of this throughout the show in terms of these protocols and what it means and the backlash still that we see amongst some players quite vocally and quite publicly. It is being reported that Ryan Tannehill is vaccinated, so he needs to just test negative twice. I think Vrabel has been reported that he's vaccinated as well. That'll just shorten all of this. That'll mean that they can come out of this protocol more quickly. If there's any silver lining for Titans fans, which obviously your concern, of course, is with the health and safety of everybody on that team. But I guess from the football perspective, and I always get apprehensive about talking about the football perspective when, of course, we're talking about health and safety. But from the football perspective, I guess if there's a silver lining that's happening before the season, is the silver lining for the Titans?
Well, and you mentioned the players that are vaccinated going through this process. It is like we saw last year. Anytime you've got new protocols in place, because now the league's operating by 2 sets for the vaccinated players and for the unvaccinated players. When you've got new protocol, being able to stress test it in this way, and again, I don't want that to sound callous because you're right, health and safety is first and foremost. But if you can show, hey, for the vaccinated players, this is why we have these protocols in place for you to help you get back quicker, to keep you safe in these, and to hope we can go on and all have a safe, productive season. So we'll get into plenty more of that here on Janae and Golick Jr. in about 20 minutes. But right now, Amber, yesterday we saw a couple of the big dominoes fall around the NFL. A couple quarterbacks finally named starters here. Jacksonville ended our national nightmare and named Trevor Lawrence their starter on their team. Teddy Bridgewater manning the helm out in Denver. And so we sit here now and look with our eyes out to New England, where Cam Newton gets set to return to practice for the Patriots. By Bill Belichick's own words, he did not violate protocol when he was away for the team after the discrepancy about when he left for an excused medical absence out of the area of New England, the way he had to test away from there. So that being said, Amber, Mac Jones just had 5 days of 1 reps with this team. How are we feeling about Cam's odds to come back and actually take this thing?
Yeah, there was some strangeness here. It's not clear whether it was really Cam's fault or the Patriots' fault, because it was about where he was tested, that he wasn't tested at the Patriots facility, even though he tested negative. Nevertheless, it seems like minutia, in other words, here. He wasn't in the health and safety protocols because he had tested positive, and the team had approved his travel. So Mac gets this opportunity, and Bill Belichick, one of his favorite mantras is dependability is more important than ability. And the dependability of Cam Newton has been the question the last few years of his career. I don't know if Mac Jones ends up being more dependable in an NFL uniform, but I think that you have those questions with Cam, and now you have this to deal with the health and safety protocols, and you wouldn't have had this to deal with if, in fact, Cam Newton was vaccinated. So there's that component of it as well, where there's some frustration potentially there, where the importance of that position and a personal choice, but these are the sorts of things that, of course, can happen because of the health and safety protocols that the NFLPA has agreed to along with the NFL. So Mac Jones gets that opportunity, and Mac Jones shows out. And the story out of joint practice is that he's unbelievable, and now maybe he's going to be the starter, and that he just eclipsed Cam Newton. Except I'll say, everyone calm down a little bit. Like, practice? You know, we're still talking about practice. Like, what are we doing? We're coming off of Cam Newton looking the best he's ever looked in a Patriots uniform in a preseason game against the Eagles. So, frankly, I think this is much ado about nothing.
Oh, so you think Cam's actually in a position to come back and still win this job?
I think it's still Cam's job, because here's the thing. When we have these conversations about any of these quarterback battles around the league, you have to consider just the course of events here. You can go from Cam to Mac Jones. Can you go from Mac Jones to Cam if you make the wrong decision with Mac Jones? Like, that's always a complicated one. We dealt with that one down here in Miami. I mean, I think Brian Flores is doing an incredible job as a young head coach for the Miami Dolphins. But that's what's questionable about his tenure from last season, is that decision to go to Tua when there was so much pressure to do so. But then the Dolphins found themselves in a situation of trying to win games and trying to make the playoffs, and they felt like, oh, crud, Ryan Fitzpatrick gives us the better opportunity to do that. So then they go back to Ryan Fitzpatrick at times, benching Tua. And what does that do to a rookie's confidence? That's not normally a move you want to make. This Patriots team, likewise, is going to be in a position to win games and try to make a postseason run. This is going to be a much improved Patriots team from last season. So you don't want to mess up the timing of turning the helm over to Mac Jones.
But I guess that's just why timing, to me, seems like it's on Mac's side here. Because, Amber, we talk about the timing of when Cam was unavailable. There was that quote from Bill Belichick that almost felt prophetic the day before that, where he talked about availability or being outplayed right as Cam had to go on the shelf because of this. And so Mac Jones, at a pivotal point in training camp, is taking max volume 1 reps with a team that's going to run an offense that I'd imagine looks a little different when he's under center here. And if he went out and capitalized on that, I mean, this was a close race already. This is Dan Orlovsky, our ESPN NFL analyst on NFL Live yesterday, saying what I said here on this program. Right now, the Patriots' job is in Mac's hands to lose.
Cam Newton, who will be back at practice or at least eligible to practice tomorrow, is there. And Mac Jones walks out with the ones. That tells me everything. That tells me that today was a moment, that opportunity was taken advantage of, and Mac Jones is going to have another opportunity tomorrow to kind of continue to solidify, and then he'll have the greater opportunity to be the guy going into Sunday for preseason game number 3.
So there you have it. We're getting ready to see just how this shakes out now, because, Amber, what we've talked about so much over the course of this week is reps. It's the currency of training camp. How are they broken up? We were frustrated in Jacksonville when Trevor Lawrence had some of his run reps given to Gardner Minshew. What's it going to look like in New England? We will wait and find that out. But, Amber, coming up next, that situation I can understand might be a little bit cloudy. This has sounded like a neck-and-neck race so far in New England between these two, with this being maybe the deciding factor. Coming up next, there is one race left in the NFL that makes no sense why we haven't already called it. We'll get to that next here. Chiney Angola Jr. on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
Gatorade knows that there are many paths to greatness. How you get there is up to you. Sometimes you gotta grind it out to get up early and put in the work, even when you're not feeling 100. Sometimes it takes staying focused on a goal, knowing where you want to be and that you'll have to pour everything in to get there. Other times, you just need to dig deep and show some guts. to be brave and never let anything stand in the way of what you can accomplish. Then there are the days you just have to get in the gym and see some gains, to put in all the reps and get stronger each day. But whatever path you take to greatness, Gatorade is there to help fuel the journey, because greatness starts with G.
Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work. You know it's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
For whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, I know the exact reason, we've had a lot of discussions this year about rules in the world of sports. We will get to more people that are a little upset with the rules in about 10 minutes here on Janae and Golick Jr. on ESPN Radio. Mike Golick Jr., Amber Wilson hanging out here. Tweet us on the Dr. Pepper Twitter feed, at Mike Golick Jr., at AmberW790. But right now it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, because, Amber, we have spent – does it just me, and I'm sure people listening feel the same way, Amber, we have spent a lot of time talking about quarterbacks before the draft this year, before the preseason this year. These rookie quarterbacks giveth, but man, Amber, they also taketh away at our sanity here, looking out at all these things going, well, these can't possibly still be quarterback battles, right? Like, am I the only one that feels like we're going crazy here?
Are you still rooting for the rookie quarterbacks throughout the regular season, or are you just so tired of talking about them at that point because you beat it to death during the preseason that you're going to be rooting against them because you're just tired of saying their names? That is how the focus goes, and that's how the coverage goes, because let's be honest, it's not just the most important position, but it's the most interesting component of the preseason is these rookie quarterback battles.
It is, because everyone else is so dependent on them. Like, every other position is dependent on what that player does with the ball here. You can argue some of that going the other way, but it doesn't really work like that. And so we understand why these decisions take time. We're used to it probably more so in college. I mean, hell, I was just reading a headline today about how Steve Sarkisian in his first year at Texas is still not ready to name a starter. That's why it felt a little JV when it was going on in Jacksonville and what we felt like was bad faith. But the one that really surprises me right now, Amber, is down in New Orleans, because we all watched in preseason, too, that performance that Jameis Winston put on. And I understand that Taysom Hill put up some decent numbers in that game as well. But part of this also has to be the eyeball test, where you just looked at Jameis Winston out there doing exactly what you hoped. Corral the bad stuff enough to let him turn it loose downfield in the way you haven't been able to in about 3 years. So, Amber, what do you think is holding them back at this point? What's keeping Sean Payton from saying the magic words?
Well, and when we're talking about these quarterback battles, Mike, that are interesting, when you're talking about a rookie competing for a spot, like we just talked about Mac Jones and Cam Newton, that's an interesting battle because we have no idea what to expect from Mac Jones. So you understand why it takes a while to make that decision as we head into a regular season. How can the coach evaluate the quarterback before he actually has him in camp and actually gets an opportunity to witness the quarterback? It's the same thing that you mentioned in college, right? Because you're there for the 4-year stint. That's not at all the situation, though, in New Orleans, and that's why this one is so extra confusing. It's so clearly Jameis Winston's job, or it should be. And you mentioned that Taysom Hill wasn't bad in that same preseason game against the Ravens where Winston balled out. I mean, he was 11 for 20, 6.9 yards per attempt. That's versus 12.3 for Winston. Winston very clearly outplayed Taysom Hill by any metric, including, like you said, the eye test. And, of course, with Jameis Winston, we are talking about a quarterback that we know has some accuracy issues, and he threw the 30 interceptions with Tampa and all that. We know all that about Jameis Winston. But what we also know is that he can throw the ball down the field, and that appears to be something that Taysom Hill struggles with. Winston has the talent, and he has the skill set, and I don't understand what we're doing here for Sean Payton, other than that Sean Payton has clearly had this love affair with Taysom Hill. I mean, he used a 31-year-old, towards the end there of Drew Brees' career, maybe more than he should have. And it's hard to explain beyond just this attachment to Taysom Hill being the guy, because anybody else sees that Jameis Winston should be the guy.
Amber, you touched on something I hadn't really considered in all this, which is the dynamic in these battles, right? Because with the rookies, we are flying blind. When you and I talk about Cam Newton and Mac Jones, all of my Mac Jones stuff is, well, what we expect from Alabama, what we hear coming out of camp. We got knowns with Cam Newton. And in this instance, it feels like Jameis Winston occupies the role of the veteran that we know about here. The strange dynamic is Taysom Hill's been in that building a long time in New Orleans. He predates Jameis, so he's really the tenured employee around that staff, but it's the same level of take my word for it from Sean Payton, essentially, that we've got to take in this spot. And that's the weirdest part, is he gets the credit for being one of these quarterback whispery guys in a way that most people would say, all right, we trust you on this, but man, we all watched him take a Hall of Famer off the field in a way that confused the hell out of a lot of us, and we weren't sure how Drew Brees always felt about it. And Amber, I feel like that's the source of the doubt there, is just the fact that we saw you get one of the best ever, and you were taking it off the field for this guys for results that were kind of a mixed bag that looked good sometimes, and maybe that's the source of the doubt now for a coach that is a Super Bowl winner, that by all accounts offensively has helped done some incredibly revolutionary things in this league, that we're still not willing to, with this particular player, give him the benefit of the doubt on.
It's a really strange thing because, like you said, he spent more time there with Brees than he should have sharing time there. And yet it wasn't like we saw something where we were thinking, oh, gosh, Sean Payton really is the quarterback whisperer. I don't know if he's just committed to Taysom Hill because he is so convinced that Taysom Hill is going to be that guy. And also they paid him. I don't know if there was some advocacy there behind the scenes that we're not aware of, where Sean Payton said, hey, if you guys pay him, I'm on the line for this. This is really important to our team, and so he's going to continue to try to roll him out. But the same way that we thought it was a really interesting way to handle the last couple of years of Drew Brees' career, I think we would look at it with the same skeptical eyes if Sean Payton ends up naming Taysom Hill the starter over a 27-year-old Jameis Winston, who's a former number one pick and who was a Pro Bowler his rookie year and who we know can throw 33 touchdowns even if he needs to clean up the interceptions in a season. So I can't imagine that's going to be the case, but it feels like there would be backlash from everybody questioning what Sean Payton is doing if Taysom Hill's the starter.
Everyone has questions right now. They're only going to mount. You can see Sean Payton getting increasingly more frustrated. We saw him having to answer these questions during media availability and getting a little snippy with folks. This is going to continue to be the dominant rung of conversation because everyone for a while, I think, has made up their mind on Taysom Hill. And for all the bad about Jameis, you're right. This is a league that always treats talent like catnip. And the kind of talent that Jameis Winston displayed as a former number one overall pick is always going to be enticing to a lot of folks. Straight Talk Wireless. No contract, no compromise. Coming up next, we will get to the rules that some NFL players feel are made to be broken. We will do that next after this word from Rumble On. Now, do you have a motorcycle, an ATV, even a truck that's just sitting in your garage that you've been waiting to sell? With RumbleOn.com, you can easily turn your unused vehicle into cash in minutes. RumbleOn.com will give you a cash offer for your vehicle and pick it up for free anytime, anywhere. Harley, Polaris, Can-Am, Yamaha. And even if you're just looking to trade in, RumbleOn will pay cash no matter what the make or model. Visit RumbleOn.com today and enter promo code RADIO to get a $300 increase on your cash offer. Fast bikes, faster cash. Back after this, down in Tennessee with the Titans next.
Black History Always, the podcast.
Come check out the new Black History Always podcast with me, Clinton Yates. We at The Undefeated are telling stories that remind people who we are as a culture is a living, breathing entity in all parts of American society. It's not just history books and social media, y'all. We contain multitudes, and everyone deserves to be heard. So listen, follow, and let's have a conversation.
Listen or follow Black History Always wherever you get your podcast.
Nipsey Hussle.
Nipsey Hussle.
Nipsey Hussle.
Nipsey.
There's a kinship between hoopers and rappers. From 30 for 30 Podcast and The Undefeated, this is the King of Crenshaw.
Hustle and motivate. I mean, if that ain't like the ethos of being an elite athlete, I don't know what is.
Nip was my superhero.
For us, it was all about how we could better our city.
Life is really a marathon.
Listen now on SiriusXM, Pandora, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast.
Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
The last time we saw the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes was basically running for his life, throwing unbelievable YOLO balls from borderline parallel to the ground. Things have changed. We'll check in on Kansas City in the offseason that may put them right back where they've been used to being, representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Janae and Golick Jr. here on ESPN Radio. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. You can save big when you bundle your auto, home, motorcycle, RV, or boat. Visit Progressive.com. Mike Golick Jr. and Amber Wilson filling in for Janae today as I am live from Mohegan Sun Arena getting ready to watch Janae and the LA Sparks take on the Connecticut Sun. And Amber, I've realized that as loud as it is in here with them testing out the in-stadium music and the PA and all that stuff, that I do feel bad. All these people that are trying to get ready to do their jobs in the arena, I am just screaming at inside the concourse here, and they get to hear about our friends at Progressive and Goodyear and all this fine stuff.
There's no people there yet in the concourses, so I would imagine that it's quite shocking for them to hear your lives. And everything that we're talking about, you're screaming about Taysom Hill as they're just over there trying to get set up for their concessions. I will say, though, the in-arena music appears to have calmed down behind you. So they must just have rehearsal from like 3 to 4:30, and then it's a wrap, and we're ready to go for tip.
I'm not going to lie, Amber, I've done radio in a lot of weird places here. You and I have both been doing this for quite some time, and I've done it in, bathrooms, on Comrexes in hotel. I was filling in on Marty and McGee once, wrapped in a bedcloth, completely sunburned from neck to toes there after a day in Miami. But doing it next to the beverage stand in Mohegan Sun Arena, probably near the top of the list now.
When they told you that you would be right outside the concession, I'm not sure you realized that they meant quite literally outside the concession. But here you are. If there's one thing that the Mohegan Sun crew knows about you, it is that they need to put you in close proximity to food and drink.
It is true, and this is better because I know this is going to be open soon as the arena gets going. There was no greater hell, Amber, than at Radio Row at the Super Bowl in Minneapolis, the Mall of America. I'm out there doing radio from 4 to 6 in the morning, staring right across from a Shake Shack that would not be open for hours there, tormenting me. So we're going to try. Thoughts and prayers are not necessary, but they're appreciated during these trying times here. Mike Golick Jr. and Amber Wilson. And Amber, we've spent so much of this year talking about rules in the pandemic, talking about rules when we were getting close to the Olympics with what happened with Sha'Carri Richardson, and now we're talking about them again because we've got COVID popping up in the NFL in certain pointed ways. Now, we saw Adam Schefter, our ESPN NFL Insider, report the Titans have 9 positive cases currently between coaches and players, including Ryan Tannehill and their head coach Mike Vrabel. But the Buffalo Bills were the ones making headlines because we heard from their players again. Cole Beasley and Isaiah McKenzie, 2 wide receivers for the Buffalo Bills, on Thursday disclosed that they were fined for violating the NFL's COVID protocol. McKenzie tweeted out a picture of the letter he got sent by the league, which included his personal email, which seems like a mistake in the way that you're tweeting that out, but tweeted out the picture that included the $14,650 fine, saying, "They got me at NFL, you win." Cole Beasley responded, "They got me too" here. As the Bills had sent home, I believe, 6 players that were deemed high-risk close contacts after a vaccinated personnel member tested positive inside the building. So, Amber, are you surprised to still hear the same refrain from a lot of guys at this point?
Well, and Beasley had tweeted out as well, and he went on to expand on the situation, talking about how he was wearing a mask when he was in close contact with the fully vaccinated trainer who tested positive, and then he still got sent home, and he's saying, what's even the point of the mask? Make it make sense. I'm a year and a half into this, right? Like, we're all a year and a half into dealing with this pandemic at this point, and I have to be honest with you, Mike, I'm not here for it anymore. The complaining about the rules. Your NFLPA agreed to these health and safety protocols along with the NFL. And frankly, it's the exact same stuff y'all were dealing with last year. The only difference is that vaxxed players have some relaxed rules. That's it. So these rules changed for vaccinated players, but they didn't really change for the unvaccinated player. We can just navigate it more easily now if you're vaccinated is the idea. And everybody's trying to do the best they can at navigating a global pandemic and trying to get the product to go forward. Because at the end of the day, it's all about playing football. You have to play football in order to make money for football. And we all know the real point of all of this. Everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants their paycheck. So you got to make sure that you can play the football, and you can't play the football if everybody's positive for COVID. So you're trying to limit that issue as much as you can. And there's only so much you can do, but they're trying to navigate this. I'm just not here for the players complaining about the health and safety protocols anymore because, man, it doesn't really matter if you agree with them or not, or even if you think they're dumb or not. Your employer, along with your union, put these rules in place. Just follow the rules, man. If you want to play football, follow the rules. You work for a private employer. I'm not even here to debate whether the rules make any sense or anything like that. It's just this is kind of where we're at after a year and a half, and we all just want to play football.
We do want to play football, and Amber, I'm glad you brought up debating the merit of the rules or not, because that's certainly not something that I'm above, right, is looking and thinking, do things make sense? We did that. That's the reason I brought up Sha'Carri Richardson's name, because the marijuana policies of the World Anti-Doping Agency were something we spent a lot of time looking and debating and say, yes, she had personal accountability and that she knew the rules that had existed for some time. But when they came into focus in that clear way, we looked and said, all right, based on the science, based on the facts of why that was a rule, can we not look at this and say there are some interesting things that we could undercut this? That does not apply in a public health crisis in the middle of a global pandemic where, again, all that science and information is on the side of, hey, we need to do right by this to make sure that people are safe at a time where we've got Delta and all these other things becoming more of a part of the conversation. And so, again, we're left with what you brought up, which is there are rules in place that your union, that's the big difference here, too, is you've got a union that collectively bargain these things. Now, Amber, how often when the NFL does something do we hear the folks over at the union get ready to fire shots across the bow? All the time. How often have we heard it on this issue? Not a peep. That should tell you something.
It should tell you something. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The difference here also is that even though you're right, we can think a rule is stupid. And certainly in a situation when we're talking about marijuana in the Olympics, we all thought that rule was stupid. But also, she hadn't been popped in dealing with that rule for the last year and a half, right? Like that rule just caught up to her. And in this situation, these COVID rules, I mean, they have made an appearance time and time again. I mean, we're seeing it right now with the Titans. It's not like we're not aware of these rules and we're not aware of the parameters and the mask wearing and the testing and everything that we have to do in order to get the product to move forth.
It's going to be amazing to watch now how these teams deal with this, too, because for everyone, every coach now stepping up in this instance, they've got to get a handle on, all right, again, different sets of players playing by different sets of rules under these protocol. How do we go forward? And as you said, try and play the football with all of this going on here. The Titans and the Bills are going to be two teams that we watch now as they deal with positive cases in their locker room, or I should say positive cases in the Titans locker room in here, close contacts and fines handed out in the Buffalo Bills locker room. Janae Golick Jr. is brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven. Coming up next, though, the defending AFC champs for the last 2 years did a little overhaul during this offseason. We'll tell you if the one position group they needed to address is in a spot that can now win them a Super Bowl yet again. We will get to that after this word from DoorDash. Now, DoorDash is here with the Summer of Dash Pass. Right now, Dash Pass members are taking $10 off groceries, alcohol, pet food, and more. You need a nightcap, $10 off. You got a cough, get relief delivered for less. You want to surprise your crush? Send a gift and save in the process. Try Dash Pass for free and get special savings, exclusive menu items, and $0 delivery fees year-round. Get more from your neighborhood now with Dash Pass in the DoorDash app, and stay cool out there. Terms and conditions apply. Back with the Kansas City Chiefs training camp questions next on ESPN Radio.
Janae and Golick Jr., the podcast.
As we get ready to wind down training camp, because we're getting to that point in time now where everyone's wrapping up, they're going to start game planning soon. It's going to start to feel real here. We got to get real and bold here. Bold predictions from one of our best and brightest around here at ESPN in about 10 minutes on Janae Golick Jr. on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. And guests are going to join us on the Goodyear Hotline, coming to you live from Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut, getting ready for the LA Sparks to take on the Connecticut Sun. We'll get you more as game time starts to ramp up. I'm seeing more employees filter in here, Amber. It's starting to get real in the building right now. The energy is palpable here, and they have not played swag surfing again, which tells you if I am in a 9 right now, the minute they drop that here, we're turning this thing up to 11.
You're going all the way up to 11, and I imagine that that's going to be happening here because we have gotten some like really strange quiet going on during this period of time. So I'm expecting them to ramp it up any minute now, and if not for the tip-off or the impending tip-off, for you and your show, because really, you're right now, like, you are the show there at Mohegan Sun. You're it.
I wish they'd have put me at half court. It felt like it would have been the right decision. I will have to talk to the in-arena DJ here about making some changes. But before we get to that here, it's time. We are finishing up. This is the last day. We have made it through training camp on this show. 3 and Out, our training camp preview for every NFL team. The 3 biggest questions facing each team. And we wrap up with the AFC West today, which means it's time. Cam, hit the music.
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, yeah. Let's head to the defending AFC champs. And for help on this, let's head to the Goodyear Hotline, where Nate Taylor joins us, Chiefs reporter over at The Athletic. And let's get to our first question here, Cam.
Number 3
on this one. And, Nate, we appreciate the time. We know we've heard a little bit of, I'd say, discomfort coming from the secondary in Kansas City here. What is the latest on the situation surrounding Tyrann Mathieu and his desire for a new contract with the Chiefs?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Mike. We're kind of at a situation where I think, based on everyone that I've talked to, that Tyrann Mathieu is not probably going to have a new deal before the season opener on September 12th, which means we push this thing all the way probably until December, right before the season ends, to see if the Chiefs and Mathieu can agree to a contract extension. We know Mathieu wants to be in Kansas City. He's made that very clear all offseason. But for the Chiefs, they still have the franchise tag at their disposal. They still got to get a new deal for Orlando Brown Jr., who they traded for, obviously, right before the draft. And based on where this salary cap goes, based on how many people are in the stands, I think the Chiefs want to get more assurity from the financial situation as to where the league salary cap is going to go before they lock in Tyrann Mathieu with another long-term deal. But for right now, he's probably going to have to play out the final year of his deal.
Cam, hit number 2.
Number 2.
Now, Nate, it is hard to find weaknesses in this team, but linebacker has been one for that team for quite some time. Is that position still an issue in terms of talent and depth, or have they addressed it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Amber, and I think the Chiefs are somewhat optimistic because they have a second-year player in Willie Gay who finally, as a lot of second-year players in this league have, a more traditional offseason, a mandatory minicamp, obviously a more traditional preseason and training camp. And so he's got some athleticism. We'll see what he can do as a first-time starter this upcoming season. And the Chiefs used their second-round pick in Nick Bolton out of Missouri, who they feel like gives them 3 athletic linebackers in the veteran Anthony Hitchens, Willie Gay, who I just mentioned, and obviously Nick Bolton. Those guys are going to have to stay healthy because I think the depth behind those 3 guys is pretty weak. And they're also going to have to be better at defending the pass. A lot of opponents in these last 2 seasons against the Chiefs have realized that tight ends and running backs, if you can throw them the ball in space, can get additional yards. The Chiefs are hoping to cover up that issue by having more younger and athletic linebackers in Willie Gay and Nick Bolton.
Chenango Gold Jr. talking to Nate Taylor from The Athletic, covering the Kansas City Chiefs in 3 and Out. Let's get to the last question here.
Number 1.
Now, we all saw the Super Bowl, Nate. We were all aware of what the shortcoming was in that game for the Chiefs as Mahomes ran for his life. So with all the changes made up front to this offensive line, can the players brought in, both young and veteran, now be a reason they win the Super Bowl?
It's going to be the entire question of this upcoming season, I believe, because everybody knows about Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and obviously Mahomes' talent. But I do think because the Chiefs want to have a offensive line that's going to grow and age as Mahomes enters throughout his prime, there's a chance that this offensive line can really gel early on. And they're going to start 3 rookies, in my opinion, with Lucas Niang at right tackle, Creed Humphrey in the middle as the center, and then Trey Smith, who's been a star and a phenomenon during training camp because of how well he's played as a 6th-round draft pick. They have some injuries with Laurent Duvernay-Tardif and with Kyle Long. We'll see where those guys are in the middle of the season if they get back into a rhythm, both coming out of retirement and obviously Laurent doing his serviceable work as a frontline worker in Montreal during the pandemic. But honestly, with Orlando Brown at left tackle, with Joe Thuney, who's one of the most consistent guards in the history of the league going into his 5th season. There's a small chance that maybe if these 5 guys can gel together with Mahomes' ability to stay mobile, that maybe the Chiefs are a more balanced team because they can both run the ball and protect Mahomes on these 3rd and long situations that obviously lead the Chiefs to having some success. It's going to be the question mark against a really good Cleveland Browns defensive line in the first week of the season, and we're just going to have to check in week after week to see until the Chiefs are a more comfortable, more balanced team on offense, if this offensive line can hold up. But they made the decision to go all in on the offensive line this offseason, and we'll see what the results are come November, December, and January.
Yeah, the first quarter of that season going to tell us an awful lot about what we can expect from that very young but talented unit. Nate, we appreciate you giving us some time. Enjoy the end of training camp here. We've almost made it.
We've almost made it. I can't wait. One more preseason game to go, Mike.
Awesome stuff. Check out Nate Taylor, again, covering the Chiefs over at The Athletic. And, Amber, it warms my heart to see so much of the focus in Kansas City that's normally been on all this speed and wonderful weapons they have, all on the beef up front here, because I think we forget, as bad as it was in the Super Bowl, they are making a shift on that line from a former number 1 overall pick in Eric Fisher manning the left tackle and Mitchell Schwartz, who's been one of the best tackles regardless of side in football for the better part of the last decade.
Well, and he mentioned the rookies they're going to have on that line. I mean, it remains to be seen. They have spent the offseason addressing the situation that we all watched play out in front of us in real time in the Super Bowl, but it remains to be seen how effective any of those moves are going to be. Obviously, that was their real weakness. Mike, I'm just excited to have gotten to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that really we don't talk about during the preseason at all because they really don't have many weaknesses, and they certainly don't have a quarterback controversy.
No, which disqualifies you from conversation in the 2021 NFL preseason. Andy Reid should have faked it for our entertainment here. Shame on him for not finding a way to get them in the conversation. Have to wonder now if Andy Reid is on the hot seat by not getting his team into all these sports talk segments on First Take. Coming up next, though, that quarterback situation is safe. I'll find you one we want to keep safer. The number 1 quarterback everyone's going to want to wrap in bubble wrap by the time we get to week 1. Next on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to Janae and Golick Jr. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. You can hear the show live weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN News, and wherever you stream your audio.